Hey everybody, and welcome to Banfield. I'm Jesse Weber in tonight for Ashley. And you know, we love our mysteries here on this show. The one we're starting with tonight, it's got everything. A shocking death, superstar victim, and this cloud of intrigue and suspicion that hasn't lifted in 63 years. 63 years exactly. That is when Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her bed in Los Angeles, and of what the authorities would call a deliberate overdose of sleeping pills. Probable suicide is what they called it. End of story? Was it? I say that because the junior coroner who was tasked with Marilyn's autopsy is still around and still wondering whether that's really what happened to her. And then, a life-saving device versus a drug designed to kill. The state of Tennessee today carried out the nation's most controversial execution of this year. Well, so far anyway. That of a 69-year-old triple murderer with a device in his chest to shock his unstable heart back into normal rhythm. The man's lawyers had argued that the implant would shock him incessantly while the lethal injection was killing him. And sure enough, reports from the death chamber show the condemned man cried out in pain in a few minutes. I am going to speak with a doctor who's written extensively on medical ethics and the role physicians play, if any, in capital punishment. Are you concerned? We'll talk about it. Also ahead, breaking news from that week-long manhunt out in Tennessee. It's over now. The accused killer of 4 people in the same family was caught this morning in Jackson. And tonight, we have learned about a connection that could equal motive. All of that is ahead on this super busy Tuesday edition of Banfield. So we begin tonight with a decades-old, made-for-Hollywood mystery that is suddenly back in the headlines. Why? So 63 years ago today, August 5th, 1962, the world woke up to the shocking news that Marilyn Monroe was dead. And the evidence pointed very strongly to suicide. She'd been found in the overnight hours by her housekeeper, face down on her bed, nude, her hand either resting on or clutching a telephone, and on her nightstand were multiple bottles of pills, including an empty bottle of Nembutal. This is a sleeping pill, and a partially empty bottle of chloral hydrate. That is a powerful sedative. Now, the Nembutal prescription was written just 2 days before Marilyn's death, and just 1 day before, a psychiatrist noted she was, quote, very despondent. Okay. Now, investigators would find out that the movie star, the pinup bombshell, had attempted suicide before by swallowing pills, but apparently had changed her mind. Those are those other times she had called for help. So you might be saying, okay, where's the mystery? I don't get it. Well, the coroner assigned to Marilyn's autopsy, a recent hire named Thomas Noguchi, found no visual evidence of pills in Marilyn's stomach or small intestine. The toxicology report showed fatal levels of both Nembutal and chloral hydrate in her system. So how did they get there? Were they injected? Noguchi went over every centimeter of Marilyn's body with a magnifying glass, didn't find any needle marks. He wanted to test Marilyn's stomach and other organs, but the toxicologist didn't see the point and threw them out. And why exactly was a very junior coroner working this very high-profile case in the first place? Why didn't the chief coroner take it? I mean, he was more than happy to do the press conference and announce the results. Now, eventually, Noguchi would be chief coroner and a superstar in the true crime world himself. He oversaw the autopsies of Robert F. Kennedy, John Belushi, many other stars, but never stopped wondering whether the official word of Marilyn Monroe was correct. At age 98, he is still wondering. So I want to bring in somebody who knows a lot about this story. Ruth Walker is the U.S. Books editor at the Daily Mail, who got the exclusive on the legendary coroner and his lingering doubts. Thanks so much for coming on. So Thomas Noguchi, the coroner, 98 years old now, made the comments to author Ann Soon Choi for her book about Noguchi. It's called L.A. Coroner. Why did he wait so long?
That's right. And I guess we can only speculate, really. But he was certainly hungry for the spotlight. He's been out of the spotlight now for decades. And one would imagine that when Ann Soon Choi approached him to tell his story, he was flattered. He was also fired twice from his job. He believed that both times it was deeply unfair. And so one could perhaps speculate, too, that he thought that he could set the record straight, finally, at the age of 98.
The question, of course, is he credible? You know, you come out with a big bombshell when a book is coming out. Some would say, oh, you're just saying this to sell books. It's a catchy headline. Is it true? He is a really famous coroner. He oversaw, he said, the autopsies of RFK, John Belushi, Natalie Wood, Sharon Tate. He was the inspiration for a TV character. Troy wrote about his ego. Is this about attention? I mean, it really all comes down to two things can be true at once. Maybe he loves the spotlight, but he might be telling the truth. The timing, though, how can we be sure that there's really something here?
I mean, you're certainly right about his ego, but he was also an excellent coroner. And in fact, his autopsy of RFK was said to be the perfect autopsy. Who knew such a thing existed? But yeah, the timing, who can say? I mean, Anne Soon Choi said that she was intrigued by the story because he was such a conflicted character. He was a Japanese immigrant who, unlike most Asian immigrants at the time to America, who were quiet and hardworking and just wanted to assimilate into the community, he was loud, he was outspoken, he was proud, he made lots of mistakes, and yet was still this great man. So that's her reasons for approaching the story. Again, he is still working, he's still active, he's still doing research, and he still wants to be relevant.
Hey, listen, I mean, bless the man, 98 years old. He's done incredible work, and he's still, making us think about things. And when you think about this, okay, first of all, if Marilyn Monroe died today with social media and what we have, totally different story. But August 1962, this is before cable news and social media, most conspiracy theories weren't shared, at least as quickly as they are right now. But there was speculation, right, that Marilyn Monroe was out there, she was wild, that she maybe had these relationships with famous people, erratic behavior. Look, let's cut through it all. A lot of people think that she might have been killed to keep her quiet. Now, there's been no definitive proof of that, but as we're talking about that, as we're considering what Noguchi is saying right now, why would people who maybe are skeptical, you say, wait a minute, not so fast, there's something you should consider about Marilyn Monroe?
Well, if you're wanting to talk about the conspiracy theories, it's kind of like a case of where do we start, right? Was it the Kennedys? She was perhaps going to speak about the relationship. Possibly one of them had shared secrets with her, pillow talk, that kind of thing. So she was killed to keep quiet. There's the mafia, who have been mentioned, the CIA. One of the most intriguing stories I've heard was that Kennedy had shared details about the UFO crash in Roswell. So she was killed to keep the aliens secret. You take your pick.
Before I let you go, Ruth, has anyone else signed off with Noguchi, confirmed what his beliefs are with respect to this? I mean, what has the response been? Because I'm imagine, is this the first time that he's ever said it, or he's spoken to people? What can you tell us?
He has spoken. He had a memoir out in 1983, I think it was, but he didn't talk about the fact that the organs had not been tested. He talked about the fact that he was surprised that as a junior coroner, he was tasked with this very, very high-profile autopsy, when it wouldn't normally have been his job. It would have been the chief coroner's job. But he's never spoken about this before, which is intriguing.
Okay.
No one else has spoken about it, and I guess we might never know. He's the only one who can prove it.
Well, a lot more to talk about. Ruth Walker, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So now I want to get a different perspective. I want to bring on Joseph Scott Morgan. He's a forensic analyst, certified death investigator, distinguished scholar of applied forensics at Jacksonville State University in Alabama. I'm smiling because he's also my good friend. Good to see you, my man. Happy to have you on here to talk about this. Okay, so we have, red flags. There are alarm bells in an autopsy, no pills in the stomach, drugs in the system. Yeah. What do you make of it?
It's bizarre, isn't it? And first, I've got to make a confession. Tom Noguchi is the only person I've ever really been starstruck by in my field, particularly. If we had a Mount Rushmore in medical legal death investigation, his face would be on that mountain. And as far as this goes, the Marilyn Monroe case, there have been an incredible amount of rumors that have floated around for years and years. This I do know. At the autopsy that Dr. Noguchi performed on Marilyn Monroe, he was looking for what are referred to as NPWs. These are known as needle puncture wounds. And just so folks at home understand, if someone injects, like recently injects, there's a methodology, particularly when you think about the arms, what we call the right and left antecubital fossa. You can start at the top of the arm, and I've actually done this in the morgue, and you squeeze the arm, you move your hand down the long axis of the arm, and you're looking for these little droplets of blood where the NPW would have been. He didn't see that, Jesse. He even checked her scalp, checked her ankles, checked in a variety of locations where you would commonly see these.
Can I ask you a juvenile question? Would the needles that were potentially used back in the day different than what we currently have? I don't know. Is that a juvenile question?
No, it's not juvenile. I think that they may have been a bit more robust. I don't know. I can't really speak to the gauge size of the needles. You know, you think about today, particularly with like diabetic needles, that the gauge size is very, very tiny. So that's an interesting perspective. But he went over her, according to him, from stem to stern, looking for these needle puncture wounds. He didn't see any. And here's the rub. When he does the evisceration of her body, that's the removal of the organs, he found nothing in her stomach. And that just does not, there's no corollary between that relative to the ingestion of pills and what you're going to get back on the toxicology report, because her levels were blown through the roof. As a matter of fact, they're described in terms of being lethal levels. And it's kind of a fascinating dynamic. How are the drugs delivered into her system, Jesse?
Is there any possible way that it was pills and somehow it wasn't detected in the system? Error, maybe there was a trace that wasn't looked at the right, place. And look, I talked about the complication with him wanting to check the stomach, and that wasn't an option.
Yeah, so what happens, particularly with what we refer to as gastric content, and that is those remnants that are in the stomach, if you die as a result of an OD, your system just shuts down completely. So those gastric contents, we collect those at autopsy. It's been done for years and years. And then you take that substance, and it's kind of a viscous liquid at that point in time. There's recognizable particulate matter in there, and you want to examine that very thoroughly. We kind of spin it down, as well as organs. I don't know if you know this, but we can take sections of liver and spin it down as well and liquefy it. And that's gone too, those samples that he took. Now, I think it's kind of a misnomer when they say that the toxicologists threw away the organs. They didn't throw away the organs, they threw away the tissue samples. My question is, why does the toxicologist have the tissue samples? Because they're generally cut into microscopic slides so that we can take a look. And let me tell you about one rumor that has floated around for years and years. And there's people, it's not just me saying it. Some people have actually thought that she may have been given a lethal suppository, which is, I don't know if it's plausible or not. If people are up to dirty tricks, perhaps it is. He talks about wanting to see the small intestine. Well, small intestine is not where you would check. You're going to check the large intestine all the way into the colon. And so that's an interesting point there. Was that area checked? And again, you're not going to get, obviously, an NPW with that.
How does that work exactly? Is that... that's a new one to me. I mean, trying to think about it like that. Is that something that could have been tested at the time? How could it have been administered? I mean, again, I'm struggling to think of a way which pills make sense, no injection marks. This is now a theory that, I don't know, it seems to check some of the boxes.
Yeah, it kind of does. And you think about pentobarbital in particular, when it is a precursor for anesthesia. As a matter of fact, in certain countries, it's actually used for people that are choosing to take their own life. You know, where they want to end their life. It's used in Europe. That drug is also used as one of the cocktails, as a component of a cocktail for lethal injection. I heard you talking about lethal injections just a little while ago, depending upon what formula that jurisdiction particularly has. Can it be absorbed? Well, if it's in a liquid form, I've worked cases over the years, Jesse, where people are smuggling drugs literally inside of their bodies, packet burst, and it's instantaneous because it's absorbed so quickly. So I think that's the reason some people in the past have gone down this road. This is not necessarily me saying this. This rumor's floated around for years and years.
The fact that there were reports that she was despondent, before she died. There were previous suicide attempts. That has to factor into the analysis in some way. I mean, does it factor into you the way in which her body was found, the condition in which she was found?
Yeah, I find it kind of interesting the status that she was in. You're talking about a lady that's nude. She's lying face down on the bed. Again, I go back to the earlier supposition here about the suppository or some semblance thereof. Isn't that kind of fascinating? Was there any signs of struggle at the scene? How thoroughly was the scene investigated? I think that that's kind of fascinating relative to that. And also some of the comments over the years that we've heard that have kind of leaked out from her psychiatric team that was taking care of her, the people that had prescribed these drugs and this sort of thing. You know, in her case, because she had been known to have severe depression for a protracted period of time, this is somebody that would, nowadays, would have been followed very, very carefully. And Jesse, these drugs that she was prescribed back then were kind of the norm. These drugs have been supplanted now by the benzo group. You know, when we think about anti-anxiety medications, that sort of thing, these things she was taking were just so high-powered. I mean, we can't even imagine this nowadays, for people that are suffering from depression, anxiety, those sorts of things. Those drugs, the benzos, have supplanted these drugs. It's not something that would be given. So you're really teetering on the edge with these, particularly if you have somebody that's psychologically fragile.
Right. So there is definitely still a possibility that the current conclusion is set, and that's exactly what happened. But there's a lot of oddities. I mean, aside from we're talking about the pills and the injection marks and the state of the body, the fact that Noguchi says, look, he's this junior coroner who is assigned to this case, the chief coroner doesn't take it. Now, you might make the argument, they gave it to a junior coroner to boss him around, right? They gave it to a junior coroner to hide evidence. They gave it to a junior coroner, you know, maybe they'll miss something. Is it strange that this was assigned to him? Because it does seem a case of this magnitude should have been given to the chief coroner. I mean, is it unusual or not?
Well, I don't know. I think that Dr. Noguchi kind of set the bar moving forward, didn't he? You talked about Belushi and these other people. He was always, and you know, he gives a great, the lady that was on earlier, she had mentioned about it earlier, I think it's called Coroner at Large was his book. He tells a great story about showing up at the Tate house, and he was physically there. I think there's even some images from the scene of him being there. And he wanted to be on the ground with the investigators. And this is the exception, not the norm in our field. Generally, forensic pathologists do not come out to the scene. It's going to be a coroner investigator, an ME investigator that goes out there. He was physically out there, and he went out to a lot of these scenes. And that's really a real benefit because you can contextualize the body at the scene and then do the examination back at the lab. I think that at that stage in his career, though, LA County, even back then, Jesse was very, very busy. It's still a very busy shop today. So I don't know if it's selective or if it was just like, okay, you're up next, you're in the bullpen, get up there, do your job.
What would it take to reopen an investigation into Marilyn Monroe's death? And by the way, are we missing another point of this that we haven't addressed regarding her death that maybe is a critical point of analysis?
I don't know that just from a scientific standpoint, if there's anything that could be tested at this point. As a matter of fact, my suspicion would indicate no. That's not even plausible this far downrange from the event. I think that any kind of new information that would rise up would have to be peripheral to her death. It would have to be kind of circumstantial, word of mouth, that sort of thing. And let's face it, Jesse, this is back in '62. How many of these people are still around? Well, Tom Noguchi is still around. Who else is there to question that might have salient information to this case? I don't see it happen. My suspicion is that Marilyn Monroe's death will forever remain shrouded in mystery. And plus, it's great talk for people to continue on about for years and years after the fact.
No, of course, but I want to go full circle to something that you mentioned. I mean, you started off talking about how he would be on the Mount Rushmore of people in your profession. I spoke with Ruth before about, how can we judge his credibility? You've studied him. You've studied the cases he's worked on. In your opinion, how accurate has he been? How reliable has he been? How credible has he been?
Oh, let me tell you something. He was desperately influenced, I think, by the JFK assassination. And this is why I've covered this extensively on my podcast. He was influenced so much by the horrible job that was done on JFK that when it came time for Bobby's autopsy, did you know that he invited just this huge group of forensic pathologists to physically be in the suite with him as he's doing Bobby's autopsy? And also, the Kennedy family did not want an autopsy on Bobby, all right? So he physically made sure that these scientists were there around the table. Unlike with JFK, if we were to believe what we've heard about him, these many years, his autopsy was done like in a almost an amphitheater with upwards of 30 people. There's a variety of, and some of these people had no business being in that. He understood that these years later, after when he's working on Bobby. So he's a type of person that learned from mistakes. He learned from others' mistakes because he saw, even at that point in time, because there wasn't this idea, you talked about conspiracy theories, there wasn't really this kind of stirring of conspiracy and all that thing, but he understood the forensic world was a very small world back then. Yeah. News travels fast. He had heard about everything that had happened with JFK. He was not going to let that happen with Bobby. And when she said that it was the perfect autopsy, she's not the first person to say that. I actually cite it many times when I'm teaching this sort of thing. I've heard other people say this. I mean, he covered every jot and tittle in that case.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, so when Mr. Noguchi speaks, we should all listen. And speaking of listen,
yes,
everybody listen to Joseph Scott Morgan on body bags. Check it out. Joseph, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, my friend. Take care.
You got it. All right, so straight ahead. No matter how you come down on capital punishment, no matter your opinion, executions under the law are not supposed to be cruel and unusual. But by any standard, the one that took place in Nashville today was unusual. The condemned man underwent a lethal injection with the device still in his chest meant to keep his heart beating in a normal rhythm. A legal fight over removing that device or simply switching it off ended with a court order to carry out the execution regardless. And reports coming out of that prison are now raising the question of cruelty. I will talk with an expert after the break. There is no question that however Byron Black may have suffered when he died this morning in Nashville, and reports indicate he did suffer, his victims suffered worse. Black was on death row for 35 years for shooting to death his girlfriend as well as her two young daughters, just 6 and 9 years old in 1988. At the time, he'd been on work release for shooting the girlfriend's husband. Now, over the years, Black's lawyers fought his execution on so many different grounds, but most recently, the defibrillator implanted in his chest. That became the focus. Why? Because Black's heart would sometimes race out of control, and the implant would shock it back into normal rhythm. A Nashville hospital refused to take it out or switch it off, and the defense argued the result would be constant painful shocks while the lethal injection was coursing through Byron Black's veins. Well, today, that execution was carried out, and all 7 media witnesses say he was in obvious pain. At one point, during the almost 10 minutes it took him to die, he said, and I quote, "Oh, it's hurting so bad." I am joined right now by Dr. Jonathan Groner, a pediatric trauma surgeon who's also written extensively on medical ethics and the role that physicians play in capital punishment. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. So, was Black's reported reaction because of the defibrillator or because of the lethal injection?
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for having me on the show. So if the defibrillator fires, it feels like a kick in the chest, and it's very painful, as you said, and usually you can see a lot of spasming of upper arms and the chest. So I'm not actually sure, but that can be known. I mean, the defibrillator also records what it does. So even though he's dead and he's lying in the morgue now, there is a device that can be put over that defibrillator device that can do a download and find out if it fired or not. Having talked to the witnesses and hearing the description from his attorney who watched the IVs be inserted, she said that the IV technician referred to a pink IV and a blue IV. A pink is a 20 gauge and a blue is a 22 gauge. Those are IVs that were used in kids and babies. So that suggests to me there may have been a problem putting in the IV. She also said that it took 6 minutes to strap him down and the straps were extremely tight. That could potentially create a tourniquet effect on his arms, depending where the straps were. So they start injecting the drugs and they just don't go to where they're supposed to go. That would really hurt. We also know this particular drug in the barbiturate family causes burning when it extravasates. So if it gets under the skin, it's like getting chemotherapy in your skin. It really burns. So I'm not sure the ICD fired while he was conscious. That is a knowable fact. But I'm sure that he had a lot of pain, and it might be that they just screwed up a different aspect of the execution.
Yeah, you've definitely laid out a lot of different complicating factors that may have led to the pain. I mean, his attorney noted that he was able to raise his head several times, express pain. Is that typical of a lethal injection, or is it the idea if the defibrillator kept kicking in, he was able to have a sense of consciousness and able to say he was in pain, which he might not have been if he was just given a standard lethal injection? Is that something that maybe that's how the defibrillator affected?
So the answer to your leading question is no.
Okay.
That when the pentobarbital is, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had an IV anesthetic. I've had propofol for procedures. It's a couple of seconds. I mean, you feel it go in and you're just out. This dose of pentobarb should have put him out in seconds. So the fact that he was raising his head and so forth, assuming the drug was already flowing, suggests the problem. And was it the ICD firing or was it a problem with the IV? Either are possible. These are knowable. In your last segment, you're talking to a forensic pathologist, right? A forensic pathologist could actually dissect out the IVs and say, hey, this catheter is really not in the vein. So these are all knowable facts with a careful forensic autopsy. And I think it's worth finding out if the state screwed up with the execution or if there's the ICD. I mean, I think people have a right to know.
What about the fact that he was pronounced dead 10 minutes after the injection? Is that standard?
Well, it's kind of a bizarre scenario. So again, I would say no, but they do this thing where like when they're done injecting the medications, they put this rock out, and all the reporters talked about that. So it seemed like it took a while, but I don't know if they just wanted to be extra double sure he was really dead. I mean, he had an EKG monitor. That's another thing that they said at the press conference. I mean, couldn't they look and see, hey, it's a flat line, he's obviously dead. So I don't know. There's a certain sort of medical charade that goes on with these executions. So there's this veneer of medical respectability. You know, they have to have a doctor come in and all that. A lot of it is kind of a show. I mean, he was definitely dead at the end, but I mean, we have this sort of constitutional mandate. As you said, his victim suffered, but we're actually not allowed to torture him according to the Constitution. It's all cruel and unusual. And, you know, the Supreme Court has said that executions don't have to be pain-free, but also says they can't be torture. It's like, what's the line, and are we doing the right thing? And so it's a really complicated scenario. I think ultimately it reflects badly on the state of Tennessee, as you said in your intro, that this did not go as planned.
There are people who will look at this and say, he killed 3 people in cold blood. I don't care if he's in pain, but we do have standards. We do have law. It is important to get that point through, and I'm glad you mentioned that. They're going to look at the defibrillator. What are you hoping that they might find about it? I mean, do you think it should have been deactivated in the first place?
They should be able to look at the... can you repeat that? It cut out.
Well, real quick, do you think they should have deactivated the defibrillator, and what are you hoping they find about it?
So that's a really complicated question from a medical, ethical, legal point of view.
Sure.
Turning it off takes a minute. I've seen it done because I had a patient in the operating room who had one. You know, the cardiology specialist comes in, they put on a magnet, they check it, in a minute it's done.
Yeah.
You know, this is, you know, I'm writing a book about this sort of Hippocratic paradox. Yeah. That doctors aren't supposed to help execute people, but yet they can provide some level of comfort in theory, like by turning this thing off. So, you know, it's a really tough question. There is no easy answer except either change the method of execution, like if this was a firing squad, we wouldn't be having this conversation, or abolish capital punishment, which won't ever be done based on how cruel the method is. I mean, when capital punishment was abolished in Great Britain, it wasn't because the executions were horrendous. It's because they felt that they were executing innocent people.
Yeah, so even though this is the end of his life, I mean, it's not the end of the investigation. Look at what happened. Maybe it's all complicating factors like you mentioned. But Dr. Jonathan Groner, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on your show.
You got it. All right, still to come. It is the best possible update to a week-long manhunt. An accused quadruple murderer was dragged out of the woods of West Tennessee this morning, and tonight we have brand new details on his apparent connection to his alleged victims. That is straight ahead. Plus, the latest on the Montana manhunt for a deranged gunman who apparently opened fire in a small-town bar. That's the allegations. We're going to talk about it. Stay with us. They saw something and said something. And now, because of the sharp-eyed citizens of Jackson, Tennessee, a week-long manhunt for Austin Raymond Drummond is over. Drummond, of course, is the suspect that we told you about last night, who allegedly murdered 4 members of one family and left the youngest family member, a baby, on a stranger's front lawn some 40 miles away. Really, really sick stuff here. Now, the baby wasn't hurt, thankfully, but the parents, the grandmother, the uncle, they're all dead. And the motive is still unclear. But just tonight, the DA confirmed that Drummond had been dating a state corrections officer who's related to the victims and is pregnant with Drummond's baby. The DA also confirmed that the corrections officer was fired from her job over the affair. We're going to have more on that in a moment. But the town of Jackson spent last night under a shelter-in-place order after Drummond was spotted on a home security camera wearing camo and carrying a rifle. This morning, he was spotted again by multiple people who each called 911. And soon after that, he was captured in some woods near a vacant pool house, where authorities said he'd been hiding inside. Police found a cache of weapons, and at the time of the murders, Drummond was out on bond in an attempted murder case stemming from a 13-year prison stint for armed robbery. Now, he faces 4 counts of murder plus aggravated kidnapping. And as we told you last night, 3 other people are being charged as accessories or helpers after the fact. Now, in Montana, there is still no sign of Michael Brown after 4 days of all-out searching in that manhunt. Brown is the former Army sergeant accused of gunning down 4 people there inside a bar that he lived next to in the town of Anaconda. The state's attorney general says they still believe they're hunting in the right haystack, that's the quote, and calls the bar massacre the top focus in the entire state. I'm joined once again by Justin Shepard, a digital journalist who's been following these cases from the beginning, and Justin's online handle is Just in the Nick of Crime. Welcome back to the show. Good to see you. Big bombshell from the DA, right? Confirming what have you heard about Drummond and his relationship with this prison guard? This is something that was new to us.
Yeah, so this was something that was being rumored by the family members, people local to the area, but now it's been officially confirmed by the DA. But basically, here's what we understand. While he was in prison serving his time, he developed a relationship with a woman by the name of Caitlin Speed, who is Courtney Rose, who was the grandmother who was killed by him, her sister. And not only did they start a relationship, that's what ended up costing her her job. And as we understand it now, she's about 4 months pregnant with his child.
And so she's also the aunt of the other 2 individuals who were killed. So you're seeing this family connection. You've done a lot of research into this case. Anybody of the family of the victims, are they talking? Are they shedding more light onto these connections or what's going on?
So we've had a few things kind of happen. Being on social media, we do a lot of lives. I was doing one with another creator, Abby Blabby, and actually 2 members of the family came into that live and were talking basically about their appreciation for people keeping the story out there, keeping his face everywhere, wanting to get justice for their family members. And then on the flip side, and this is alleged, I don't think it's been confirmed officially yet, but it looks legit. His family actually reached out and gave a note urging him to turn himself in. Because a lot of people forget with these types of situations that the perpetrator's family is also a victim a lot of the times having to go through this.
It doesn't seem like he was persuaded to do that because you had these citizens who spotted him. And by the way, I think it was reported 8:57 there was a call and he was arrested at 9:05. So you're talking about an 8-minute response time. Now, they might have been in the area regardless. But what have you heard about those who called 911 and are heroes in this case?
Yeah, so I agree. Everybody who spotted him and called him are absolute heroes, especially knowing that there's a risk here, given the fact that he is in a gang. So you don't know if there's going to be any type of retaliation from that. Obviously, that's speculation, but we know that there was one person, Mr. Contras, I know his name. He was like, it's just the right thing. We saw him, and we felt we needed to call, so that's what he did. I think that a lot of people who did call in and reported that they saw him were just trying to be good Samaritans, good citizens, and weren't looking at themselves as heroes, but they 100% are.
Yeah, he has these alleged ties to the vice lords. Again, it's interesting. He was found in kind of this vacant building. They recovered these firearms, but they couldn't exactly confirm whether they were the firearms or weapons that were used in the attack on these 4 individuals. So we're still piecing together more information. But you have this, I don't know if it's successful, but a resolution out there as they're still piecing together what happened. But now you still have this unsolved case in Montana, right? You have Michael Brown still on the loose. This is somebody who has reported mental health issues, quadruple homicide, no clear motive if he did it, why. He knew all the people in the bar. Do you think here the public is going to help end this manhunt as well?
Well, I sure hope so. This one hasn't gotten as much social media coverage as I believe that it should. He's very dangerous. And I think it's very different scenarios, whereas you had somebody like Austin Drummond who is just a violent individual. This is a man that has severe mental health issues, schizophrenia. And so we don't know what he's capable of. Now, what I can tell you is my understanding is the town of Anaconda, Montana is still on lockdown after this. It's been since, the 29th that this has been going on. And a lot of the citizens are feeling very frustrated. A lot of them want to join in the manhunt. There's a couple different motives for that. Some of it is that they're angry that this happened in their town and they want to find him and have him brought to justice. And others just want closure and for things to go back to as normal as they possibly can in that town, have it open back up, and just go back to their normal daily lives.
And it is exploring larger questions, if he did this, about PTSD, about what his service was like, what he was suffering from. Did he get the help that he needed? Those are questions that will come out later. Right now, it is trying to find him. He is a danger, possibly to others, possibly to himself. And we talked last night about how investigators might need to take these mental health warnings if they're going to encounter him and need to negotiate him for a safe and successful resolution. So we're keeping a careful eye on this. Justin Shepard, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Now, we do have a programming note. So tomorrow night, one of the civilians who spotted Austin Drummond and called 911 going to join us live with the firsthand account. Don't miss that. That's going to be interesting to hear. Now, straight ahead. Does everyone really deserve a second chance? Even axe murderers? The state of Minnesota says maybe so, if they're young enough. And now, that position's being tested like never before. Can 30-plus years in prison ever change a person for the better? Or are vicious killers vicious all their lives? You can decide when we come back. All right, it's time now for a segment we call the alternate juror, where you decide who's in the right and who's not. So last week, a 4-time axe murderer walked out of a Minnesota prison for the much less stringent confines of a halfway house. David Brom was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for killing his parents and 2 younger siblings back in 1988 when he was just 16 years old. He was tried as an adult, convicted of first-degree murder. That would have been that, except for a state law that passed in 2023 that ended life without parole sentences for juveniles. Now, Minnesota became the 28th state to do that. Brom became eligible for parole immediately, and last month he was cleared to join a work release program under supervision and GPS monitoring 24/7. The state rep who wrote the new law applauds Brom's second chance, saying, and I quote, "No one should have to spend their entire life behind bars for something they were convicted of as a child when they've spent decades behind being rehabilitated." The Minnesota House Speaker disagreed disagrees, saying she's very, very disappointed and very concerned at David Brahm's release. So what do you think? Should everyone, even an axe murderer, get a second chance? Email us at banfieldtips@newsnation.com.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.